You don't become who you're meant to be by clinging to who you used to be. I know you're standing at a crossroads. Part of you feels proud of how far you've come. Another part feels restless, like something inside you is asking for more courage, more truth, more alignment. You've outgrown some versions of yourself, but you're scared to let them go. And that fear is human because change doesn't just ask for action, it asks for surrender. Today, I want to walk with you through that surrender. Not as someone who has it all figured out, but as someone who learned that growth begins the moment you stop negotiating with your past. There comes a moment in life when you realize that surviving is no longer enough. You may have learned how to endure pain, how to stay quiet, how to adapt, how to carry weight on your shoulders without letting the world see you bend. That version of you was brave. It was necessary. It kept you going when you didn't know how else to move forward. But survival, as powerful as it is, was never meant to be your final destination. The truth is, you cannot heal in the same identity that hurt you. The habits that once protected you may now be the very things holding you back. The silence that kept you safe may now be choking your voice. The armor you built to survive the world may now be too heavy to let you rise. And that doesn't mean you failed, it means you evolved. So many of us stay loyal to an old version of ourselves out of fear of change, fear of disappointing others, fear of losing the only identity we've ever known. We say things like, "This is just how I am," or "I've always been this way," without realizing that those sentences quietly imprison us. They keep us tied to a past season that has already done its work. Healing begins with honesty, with looking at yourself gently and saying, "I did the best I could with what I knew then." There is no shame in that. There is grace in that. The old you doesn't deserve blame, it deserves gratitude. It carried you through storms you didn't think you'd survive. It made decisions with limited tools and limited light. And now its job is complete. But here's the part we often resist. Honoring the old you does not mean living there forever. Growth asks for release. It asks you to stop reopening wounds just to prove how strong you were. It asks you to stop identifying with pain as if suffering is your qualification for worth. You don't need to stay broken to stay humble. You don't need to bleed to be deserving. There was a time when I believed that enduring discomfort quietly was a virtue. I thought strength meant swallowing words, shrinking needs, dimming desires. I wore resilience like a badge, even when it was costing me my joy. And one day I realized something painful but freeing. I wasn't healing. I was just coping. I wasn't transforming. I was surviving on repeat. Healing is not about fixing what's wrong with you. It's about allowing yourself to become someone new. Someone who no longer needs to hide behind old patterns. Someone who doesn't confuse familiarity with safety. Someone who understands that peace feels unfamiliar at first because chaos used to feel like home. When you try to heal while clinging to an old identity, you sabotage yourself. You revisit old stories. You relive old wounds. You speak from a place of "this is who I've always been," instead of "this is who I'm becoming." And slowly, without realizing it, you keep reopening doors that were meant to close. Letting go of the old you doesn't erase your past. It redeems it. It says, "Thank you for getting me here. I'll take it from here." It's an act of self-respect. It's an act of faith. Because faith isn't just believing things will get better. It's believing you're allowed to be better. God does not ask you to stay in pain to prove your character. Growth is not betrayal. Healing is not weakness. Moving on does not mean you forgot where you came from. It means you learned from it. And learning is the highest form of honoring your journey. The moment you stop introducing yourself through your wounds, everything changes. You stop seeing yourself as damaged and start seeing yourself as developing. You stop rehearsing old hurts and start writing new chapters. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, who is this shaping me to become? This is where transformation begins. Not with force, not with pressure, but with permission. Permission to outgrow the version of you that only knew how to survive. Permission to rest that identity. Permission to step into healing without guilt. You are not abandoning yourself. You are meeting yourself at a higher level of truth. And the moment you allow that old identity to loosen its grip, you create space. Space for peace, space for clarity, space for the person you were always meant to become. Say it quietly, but say it honestly. That version of me saved my life, and this version will build it. There is a subtle moment in every transformation where something inside you shifts. Nothing changes on the outside yet. Your life looks the same. Your responsibilities are the same. Your challenges are still there. But internally, a quiet decision is made. You stop explaining why you can't, and you start asking how you will. That is the moment excuses lose their power. Excuses are rarely loud. They don't sound like weakness. They sound reasonable. They sound intelligent. They sound like logic trying to protect you from discomfort. They say things like, not right now, maybe later, once things settle, or this isn't the right season. And for a while, they feel harmless. They even feel kind. But slowly, they become cages. The old version of you negotiates with life. It waits for perfect conditions. It seeks permission. It hopes motivation will arrive before action does. The new version of you understands something very different. That clarity comes after commitment, not before it. That momentum follows decision. That waiting for readiness is often just fear wearing a polite mask. I've learned this the hard way. There were moments when I told myself I was being patient, when in reality I was being hesitant. I blamed timing. I blamed circumstances. I blamed responsibilities. But beneath all of it was one truth I didn't want to face. I was afraid of failing at something that mattered deeply to me. So instead of risking failure, I chose delay. And delay felt safer. Excuses are comforting because they remove responsibility. They allow you to stay where you are without confronting the cost of staying there. They tell you that your dreams are valid, just not urgent. And urgency is exactly what growth requires. The day excuses lose their power is the day you accept full ownership of your life. Not control over everything, but responsibility for your response. You stop saying, this is how it happened to me, and you start saying, this is what I will do next. That shift is small in words, but massive in impact. Discipline enters your life not as punishment, but as devotion. Devotion to the future you keep praying for. Devotion to the gifts you've been given. Devotion to the time you are living in right now. Discipline is not about being harsh with yourself. It's about being honest with yourself. There were days I didn't feel inspired. Days I didn't feel confident. Days when doubt was louder than belief. But I learned. Add something essential. Waiting to feel ready is a luxury growth doesn't offer. You show up because you said you would. You take the step because you committed to the journey. You act not because you feel fearless, but because fear no longer gets to vote. Excuses keep you emotionally comfortable but spiritually stagnant. They keep you rehearsing the same conversations, the same regrets, the same what-ifs. And slowly, life passes by while you are busy justifying why you haven't begun. One day you wake up and realize the hardest part isn't failure. It's the regret of never trying fully. When excuses lose their power, accountability takes its place. You stop romanticizing potential and start respecting progress. You stop measuring your life by intentions and start measuring it by action. And something remarkable happens. Confidence grows. Not because everything works out, but because you trust yourself to show up regardless of the outcome. This is where faith becomes practical. Faith is not passive. Faith doesn't sit back and wait for signs. Faith moves, trusting that the road will meet you as you walk. When you let go of excuses, you're not saying you're fearless. You're saying fear will no longer decide your future. You begin to understand that the cost of discipline is always less than the cost of regret. That temporary discomfort is far kinder than lifelong disappointment. That every excuse you release creates space for courage to enter. The new you doesn't waste energy explaining their dreams to people who don't understand them. The new you doesn't seek validation before action. The new you knows that commitment is louder than confidence, and consistency is more powerful than motivation. And slowly, almost without realizing it, your life starts to move. Not because everything is perfect, but because you stopped waiting for perfection to begin. You chose respo, instability over comfort, truth over stories, action over explanation. The moment excuses lose their power, your potential finally has room to breathe. There is a kind of faith that feels safe. It stays inside prayers, inside wishes, inside thoughts you never act on. And then there is real faith, the kind that asks you to move before you feel ready, to walk before the road is visible, to trust without evidence. That faith is uncomfortable, but it is the only kind that transforms you. Most people wait for clarity. They say, once I know exactly how this will work, I'll begin. Once I feel confident, I'll take the step. Once the fear goes away, I'll move forward. But clarity doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who walk. Courage is not the reward. It is the requirement. I've stood at edges where logic had no answers, where the plan wasn't complete, where the outcome wasn't guaranteed. And in those moments, fear spoke loudly. It asked smart questions. It demanded proof. It reminded me of everything that could go wrong. And yet, something quieter spoke underneath it all, a knowing, a deep inner voice that said, go anyway. Faith is not blind optimism. It is deep trust. Trust that you are guided even when you cannot see the whole picture. Trust that the same power that placed the dream in your heart will also give you the strength to walk toward it. Trust that the ground will appear when your foot reaches for it. The old version of you waits for permission. From people, from circumstances, from confidence. The new version of you understands that permission is internal. That waiting for approval is often just fear delaying your destiny. You don't need every answer to take the first step. You need willingness. There is a spiritual law at work here. Movement invites support. When you stay still, life stays quiet. When you move, doors respond. Not all of the open, but the right ones do. Faith activates alignment. It shifts things you cannot see. It rearranges opportunities, conversations, timing. But none of that happens while you stand frozen, demanding guarantees. I've learned that the most defining moments of growth come disguised as uncertainty. They don't arrive with applause or clarity. They arrive with discomfort, with doubt, with a choice. And that choice is simple but not easy: trust or retreat. Fear will always ask for proof before action. Faith asks for action before proof, and every meaningful transformation in my life required that leap. Not a reckless one, but an honest one. One that said, I don't know how this will unfold, but I know who I am becoming. When you walk in faith, you stop trying to control the outcome. Control is rooted in fear. Faith is rooted in surrender. Surrender doesn't mean passivity. It means alignment. It means doing your part diligently, while trusting that the rest will meet you in time. The road doesn't appear all at once because you are not meant to run it in one step. You are meant to grow with it. Each step builds the strength you'll need for the next one. Each act of courage stretches your capacity, and slowly, what once felt terrifying becomes familiar. Waiting for certainty keeps you small. Trusting in faith expands you, and the irony is this: the more you move, the clearer things become. The more you trust, the stronger you feel. The more you act, the more confidence follows. Confidence is not the starting point, it is the result. Faith also humbles you. It reminds you that you don't walk alone, that your journey is not just about personal success but about purpose, about becoming someone who can carry responsibility with grace, someone who can serve with integrity, someone who knows that progress is guided, not forced. There will be moments when you doubt yourself. Again, that doesn't mean you've lost faith. It means you're human. Faith is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to move with fear beside you, not in front of you. The new you does not demand certainty before obedience. The new you understands that faith is not comfort. It is courage in motion. And every time you choose to walk forward without the full map, you strengthen a muscle inside you that fear can never control again. So take the step, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, even if the path feels unfinished. The road will meet you where your faith places your feet. Clarity is coming, but it only comes to those who are brave enough to begin. There comes a point in your growth where the greatest threat is no longer failure. It is familiarity, familiar people, familiar patterns, familiar access. And this is where boundaries become sacred, not because you want to shut the world out, but because you finally understand what it costs to let everyone in. The old version of you wanted to be understood by everyone. It explained itself constantly. It overgave. It overextended. It tolerated discomfort to avoid disappointing others. It confused kindness with self-abandonment. And for a long time that felt noble. But slowly, quietly, it became exhausting. The new version of you learns a hard truth: not everyone deserves proximity. Some people only loved a version of you that was easy to manage. The version that said yes quickly. The version that stayed quiet to keep the peace. The version that didn't take up too much space. And when you begin to change, those same people may resist it. Not because you're wrong, but because your growth disrupts what they benefited from. Boundaries are not punishments. They are protection. They are clarity. They are self-respect in action. When you set a boundary, you are not saying, "I don't care." You are saying, "I care enough about my peace to protect it." And peace, once you taste it, becomes non-negotiable. I learned that every time I ignored my own discomfort to keep someone else comfortable, I paid for it later. In resentment, in burnout, in self-doubt. Your body always keeps score. Your spirit always knows when you are betraying yourself. And no amount of external approval can compensate for internal misalignment. The most difficult boundaries are not with strangers. They are with people you love. People who have known you for years. People who expect access because of history. But history alone is not a contract for unlimited availability. Growth requires renegotiation. And not everyone will like the new terms. When you begin to say no without explanation, guilt may rise. That's normal. Guilt is the echo of old conditioning. You were taught that being available made you valuable, that being agreeable made you lovable. But love that requires self-erasure is not love, it's control. Boundaries teach people how to treat you, but more importantly, they teach you how to treat yourself. They remind you that your time is sacred. Your energy is finite. Your purpose is bigger than pleasing everyone. And once you understand that, You stop apologizing for choosing yourself. There is strength in restraint, strength in silence, strength in walking away from conversations that drain you. The new you does not argue for their worth. It doesn't beg for understanding. It doesn't chase validation. It stands firm, calmly, respectfully, unapologetically. Peace is expensive. It costs habits. It costs relationships. It costs versions of yourself that survived by accommodating too much. And not everyone will be able to afford access to the life you are building. That doesn't make you selfish. It makes you intentional. Boundaries are doors, not walls. They don't shut people out, they filter. Who comes in. They allow love to exist without resentment, connection without depletion, service without self-neglect. They create space for relationships rooted in respect instead of obligation. As you grow, you will notice something powerful. The right people adjust. They don't guilt you, they don't manipulate you, they don't demand explanations. They respect your limits because they respect you. And the ones who leave, they were attached to the old version of you anyway. You don't need to announce your boundaries. You don't need to defend them. You don't need to justify your healing. Consistency will speak for you. Calm firmness will teach others what arguments never could. The new you understands that boundaries are not barriers to love. They are invitations to healthier love. Love that sees you clearly. Love that meets you where you are. Love that doesn't require you to disappear. Choosing boundaries is choosing alignment. It's choosing peace over performance, truth over approval, self-respect over self-sacrifice. And every time you honor a boundary, you send a message to yourself, I am worthy of protection. That message changes everything. There is a quiet kind of respect you develop for yourself when you begin to show up consistently, especially on the days no one is watching, no one is applauding, and no one is reminding you of your potential. That respect is built through discipline. Not the harsh, punishing kind, but the sacred kind. The kind that says, I honor what has been entrusted to me. The old version of you waited for motivation. It waited to feel inspired, confident, ready. It assumed progress should feel exciting. But motivation is emotional. It rises and falls. Discipline is spiritual. It stays. It anchors you when feelings shift. It carries you when excitement fades. There were mornings I didn't want to begin. Days when self-doubt was louder than belief. Moments when the easier choice whispered seductively. And still, I showed up. Not because I felt powerful, but because I understood something deeply. Consistency is how you say thank you to your potential. Every gift you carry comes with responsibility. Talent is not random. Opportunity is not accidental. They are entrusted to you, and discipline is how you protect them. When you show up regularly, even imperfectly, you tell your future self, I believe you're worth the effort. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction. In truth, it is liberation. It frees you from dependence on mood. It frees you from the chaos of inconsistency. It frees you from the guilt of knowing you could have done more but didn't. Structure creates freedom. Routine creates clarity. Commitment creates confidence. I learned that waiting for the perfect moment was costing me precious time. So I began to treat my goals with reverence. I scheduled them. I protected them. I honored them even when they felt inconvenient. And slowly, something shifted. I stopped negotiating with myself. I stopped breaking promises to myself. And in that integrity, self-trust was born. The most powerful transformations don't come from dramatic changes. They come from small, repeated acts of discipline. Choosing to show up. Choosing to try again. choosing to stay consistent when quitting would be easier. These choices compound quietly until one day you look back and realize you are no longer who you used to be. Discipline also humbles you. It teaches patience. It teaches persistence. It reminds you that growth is earned, not gifted. There are no shortcuts that lead to lasting fulfillment. The path may be slow, but it is honest. And honesty builds strength that lasts. There were seasons when no results were visible, when progress felt invisible, when it seemed like effort was disappearing into silence. But discipline taught me to trust the process, not just the outcome, to value obedience over applause, to respect the work even before it respected me back. Gratitude transforms discipline from burden to blessing. When you are grateful for your abilities, your time, your opportunities, discipline feels like devotion, not duty. You don't show up because you have to. You show up because you get to. Because someone else would pray for the chances you are overlooking. The new you doesn't wait to feel like doing the work. The new you understands that feelings follow action. Momentum follows movement. Confidence follows consistency. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your identity. You become someone who can be relied on by others and by yourself. Discipline doesn't mean perfection. It means persistence. It means returning when you fall off. It means forgiving yourself quickly and recommitting fully. There is grace in discipline. Grace that says, begin again, but don't quit. This is how gratitude becomes embodied, not through words but through action, through effort, through commitment. You honor your potential by working with it, not just admiring it. You respect your dreams by tending to them daily, not just dreaming louder. And over time, discipline stops feeling heavy. It becomes part of who you are. A quiet strength, a steady rhythm, a foundation you can build anything on. Showing up is how you say thank you to life, to faith, to the future waiting for you. As you rise, something important happens. The world begins to notice you. Your confidence grows, your capacity expands, your voice becomes steadier. And right there, at that point of elevation, transformation faces its greatest test. Not success, not failure, ego. This is why service matters. It keeps your growth rooted. It keeps your becoming honest. There was a time I thought achievement alone would feel complete. That if I worked hard enough, climbed high enough, proved myself long enough, fulfillment would arrive and stay. But success without service is loud and hollow. It looks impressive from the outside, yet feels strangely empty on the inside. Because growth that only serves the self eventually collapses under its own weight. Service is what gives transformation meaning. It reminds you that your journey is not just about you, that your strength was shaped so it could be shared, that your healing was never meant to stop at your own life. When your growth becomes useful to someone else, it stops being ego and starts becoming purpose. I've learned that the higher you go, the more intentional you must be about staying human. Titles don't make you valuable. Platforms don't make you wise. Influence doesn't make you whole. What grounds you is remembering where you started and choosing to extend a hand back without superiority. Service doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. It's listening when you're tired. It's mentoring when no one sees. It's giving credit instead of taking it. It's choosing compassion over competition. These moments shape your character more than applause ever could. The old version of you may have been focused on proving worth, on being seen, on being validated. And that makes sense. Survival teaches you to chase security, but the new version of you understands that worth is not proven. It's expressed. And one of the most powerful expressions of worth is contribution. When you serve, you stay teachable. You stay aware. You remember that everyone is fighting a battle you cannot see. That humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And that awareness protects you from becoming disconnected from reality. There is a spiritual exchange that happens in service. You give, and somehow you receive more clarity, more grounding, more peace, because service aligns you with something larger than personal ambition. It reminds you that your life is part of a bigger story, one that doesn't revolve around recognition but around impact. I've seen people rise quickly and lose themselves just as fast, not because they weren't talented, but because they forgot why they started. They forgot the people, they forgot the purpose, they forgot the responsibility that comes with growth. Service keeps you from that forgetting. When you serve, you don't look down on others from where you stand. You kneel beside them. You don't measure success only by what you've gained, but by what you've given. And that measurement changes everything. It softens you, it steadies you, it keeps your heart open even as your world expands. Service also teaches gratitude in action. Gratitude is not just saying thank you, it's living in a way that honors the blessings you've received. If you've been given strength, you lift. If you've been given voice, you speak for those still finding theirs. If you've been given opportunity, you open doors behind you. The new you understands that legacy is not built through accumulation. It's built through contribution, through lives touched, through moments of kindness that outlive applause, through integrity practiced when no one is watching. You don't have to save the world to live in service. You just have to show up with intention, to care, to notice, to give without needing credit. That kind of service shapes you from the inside out. It keeps your transformation clean, aligned, grounded. And here's the quiet truth. Service protects you from emptiness, from arrogance, from isolation. It reminds you that growth is not a solo performance. It's a shared experience. And when your success becomes a bridge instead of a pedestal, your life begins to feel whole. The new you is not just elevated, the new you is useful, and that usefulness is what turns growth into purpose. And as you stand here now, stronger, clearer, more awake than you've ever been, remember this one truth: you were never created to remain who you were. You were created to become who you are willing to grow into. Faith is not just believing that life will work out someday. Faith is choosing to show up today, even when the path feels uncertain. It's trusting that every step taken with integrity is already blessed. Release the old versions with gratitude. Honor them, then let them go. Step forward with courage, not perfection. With discipline, not fear. With service, not ego. Because when you walk in alignment, life meets you halfway. When you move with faith, strength rises to meet your effort. And when you choose growth over comfort, purpose over approval, you don't just change your life, you answer your calling. So don't wait for permission. Don't wait for certainty. Don't wait for the world to believe in you. Believe first, move anyway, and become the person your prayers have been preparing you to be.